Wonderful to be here on a very nice day in Wellington. We haven't had a lot of them lately, and it's very pleasing that the public service is still functioning despite the difficulties with the tectonic plates. Andrew and I have written a little book called A Constitution for Aotearoa New Zealand. What it says at the front is we propose a written codified constitution for New Zealand that aims to set out in an accessible form and single document the fundamental rules and principles under which New Zealand is to be governed. This small book is only $25. It's got the Constitution in it, and Unity books are outside. And one of the things about the Constitution is that the public servants are some of the few people in this country who understand it. So what we would like very much is submissions from the public service, the public servants, the PSA, and all of you here. There's a website, www.constitutionaotearoa.org.nz, and it's very easy. You can make the submission online. We're going to publish a refined version of this Constitution in another year because we want to get as many submissions as we can. Now, the first part of my talk is called The Public Service in a Post-Truth Age. Because the problems confronting New Zealand are going to be harder to solve in the future than they've been in the past, and we've got to get thinking going beyond the triennial election cycle. A parliamentary term of 4 years would be better than a 3-year term if we had more constitutional checks and balances. You just only have to think about climate change and the transition to a low carbon economy. The challenges facing the public service have never been greater than they are today. The Oxford dictionaries of both Britain and America announced recently that a new joint word had been created in those dictionaries called post-truth. And the new word is defined as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeal to emotion and personal belief. And this condition has been described as a political culture in which politics have become entirely disconnected from policy and substance. Now, because of post-truth politics, which seems to be enveloping two of the countries with whom we often compare ourselves, the United Kingdom and the United States, because of that, vigilance is greatly required. We have to have a lot more care about our Constitution in an age when the media is breaking, if not broken. Parliament, politics and public policy are often reported in the media, I put it to you, in ways of stunning superficiality. In a recent letter to the editor of the Dominion, Dr. Kerry MacDonald, who's an economist and company director, gave us as his view that the public service will not be efficient, effective or credible until there's a revolution. He thinks it's been a shambles for too long. He says performance is often mediocre with frequent failures. The performance management of its leadership is poor or not existent. It makes little contribution to public debate on policy. It seems more subservient than strategic or visionary. He says, I see no sign of free and frank advice, although someone just gave me a t-shirt that says that we want it. And he concluded his remarks by saying the Ombudsman's report on the Revstock-Rennie debacle is frightening. Fundamentally, it is a senior leadership problem. Well, now, there is, in my view, a serious set of issues in this space. The public service and the wider state sector comprise a vital part of our system of government. And the health and well-being of the public service and public sector goes to the very heart of our well-being as a nation. It is, therefore, a topic of pervasive constitutional importance. We have had in New Zealand, fortunately, a long tradition of a politically neutral, incorruptible, competent and far-sighted public service. It's got a long and proud history, but it is not as strong or as resilient as once it was. The culture of leadership and spirit of those involved are critical factors in producing a high-quality public service, and serious problems that where they exist have to be addressed in a principled and comprehensive fashion. And I think that fundamental principles about the public service need to be reasserted. It does, after all, belong to the public. It's not an exclusive plaything of ministers. And we need to protect its integrity and its quality. In 2014, I published an op-ed piece in the Dominion Post calling for a Royal Commission on the public sector and gave 14 reasons why that should happen. It was a theme that I developed in some detail in my 2013 memoir. The conclusion is this, and I'll read it: there needs to be a Royal Commission into the public service to refurbish it and clarify the principles upon which it is based, including political neutrality. The structures need attention, and the need to develop more strength at the centre needs consideration. The ways in which management theories are implemented in the public service needs analysis. I believe that still to be the case. We had a Royal Commission in 1912, another one in 1962, and both of them served the nation well. They produced enduring and beneficial change. But the theme we're promoting here, Dr. Butler and I, today is slightly different. It is that the public service and its values need constitutional protection to avoid their being lost. Constitutional protection means setting out the principles and making them more enduring so they cannot be easily whittled away. We want to preserve as much of our existing good principles as much as we can. We want to have, though, a supreme law constitution. And that supreme law constitution is justified essentially by three arguments. The first argument is that you can't find the New Zealand Constitution in any one place. It's all over the place. It's in statutes passed in England, statutes passed here, it's in standing orders, it's in regulations, it's in prerogative instruments, and it's in customs and conventions which are not actually written down in any authoritative place anywhere. So the first order of business that we have is to put the Constitution, whatever is in it, in one place so everyone can see it. And of course that is not an easy thing to do. But we think that's very important. We also think that some features of our constitutional arrangements are just not fit for purpose in the social realities. There needs to be change. We need a constitution that fits the modern age, not one where you have to dig back to 1688 to see what the story might be, as Mr. Fitzgerald of famous memory did. There are, of course, underlying structural issues in the public service, the way it's ministered, massive discrepancies in size and resources between departments, and there needs to be, there is a lack of central organisation, I think, which has exacerbated the silo effect between departments. We talk about joined up government, but it often doesn't happen. There's been, it's fairly clear over the years, an absence of free and frank advice offered to ministers, and if they don't get that, there's a real risk that will promote a tendency to politicise the public service and endanger its independence. So the public service has got to be independent, working for the country as a whole. It should serve up various options dealing with issues, and the ministers should choose between those options. That's how the system was supposed to work. But in increasing years, when I looked at cabinet papers when I was president of the Law Commission, there weren't very many options on offer. I think related to this, there's a tendency to think about legislation and policy only in relation to the 3-year election cycle and what the particular measure might do for the electoral prospects of the government. I think legislative design needs to be approached in a different way so that there is greater effect given to the long-term problems that the country is facing and less to the immediate. The 2013 changes to the State Secretary Act made the law less coherent, I think, and the principles upon which the public service is meant to operate are unclear. Given the increased difficulties and the complexities of policy design, I do think higher standards are needed. If you want to find policy failures, read the Kitteridge report on the Government Communications Security Bureau, the Leaky Homes saga, Nova Pay, the Pike River disaster. These are policy failures, and they do indicate that improvements are needed. And I think we could do better as well on emergencies from earthquakes. But of course, not all those ills can be addressed in a constitution. But the main principles of a Westminster-style constitution with a politically neutral, able public service, they have to be embedded in our constitution and preserved and protected. And in the constitution we're offering, there are other checks and balances as well, such as changes to the Official Information Act and changes for the way we make law. But the text of Article 26 is of critical importance to you. It deals with the public service. It says the public service recognised by this constitution as the public service in existence before this constitution entered into force. The public service is a career-based service where appointment and promotion is on professional merit. The first duty of the public service is to act in accordance with this constitution and the law. The public service must be politically neutral and impartial and must loyally serve the government of the day. The public service must provide ministers with free and frank advice. The public service must uphold the concept of stewardship. The public service is headed by the State Services Commissioner appointed by a resolution of the House of Representatives after receiving a recommendation from the appropriate Select Committee of Parliament. That's a change. The Commissioner makes decisions independently of ministers and is the employer of the executives. And an Act of Parliament in accordance with these principles provides for a state sector system that is imbued with the spirit of service to the community, provides free and frank advice, administers the policies of the government, maintains high standards of integrity of conduct, maintains political neutrality and impartiality, is supported by an effective workforce and personnel arrangements, is driven by a culture of excellence and efficiency, fosters a culture of stewardship, and requires public servants to act within the law. Well now, the thing about that, some of that will be very familiar to you, but there are important new elements in there. There is a legal duty to provide free and frank advice, whether ministers want it or not. And indeed, there is also the fact that this is a superior law constitution. It can't be changed by the ease of an ordinary statute, and that's a really important change.